Hi, I'm Karen Weeks, and this is Regina Bianucci-Russ. We're here to talk to you about Proposition 30. You'll see it on your ballot as provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing tax on personal income over $2 million. Proposition 30 was put on the ballot by petition signatures and requires a majority vote for approval. So, Regina, what is the question behind Proposition 30?
Yes, Karen. The question is, should the tax rate on personal income above $2 million be increased by 1.75% and the revenue dedicated to lowering greenhouse gas emissions through zero-emission vehicle and infrastructure subsidies and wildfire suppression and prevention programs?
Can you give us some background?
Sure. California is currently experiencing severe drought, increasingly devastating wildfire, and poor air quality. Gas-powered vehicles and wildfire smoke are the two largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the state.
Are there current laws addressing these situations?
Yes, state law requires California reduce its greenhouse gas levels by 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. State law also requires ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft to have 90% of their drivers using zero-emission vehicles by 2030. But zero-emission vehicles are expensive and unaffordable for many residents, and the state lacks sufficient charging stations to support increased use of these vehicles. The state recently committed to spending $10 billion over the next 5 years on zero-emission vehicles, and on average spends $2.2 to $4 billion annually on wildfire response.
How about the wildfire situation? What is the background on that?
The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, which is CAL FIRE, is facing rising costs for its programs as fires have become increasingly catastrophic.
What does Proposition 30 propose?
Proposition 30 would increase personal income taxes by 1.75% of those individuals making over $2 million a year effective January 2023.
And how would the money generated be allocated?
20% of the funds would go to wildfire prevention and suppression programs. 45% of the funds would be allocated for incentives to purchase zero-emission vehicles, and 35% would go toward the purchase and installation of zero-emission vehicle charging stations.
Are there any other stipulations?
Yes, the proposition mandates at least half of the new funds collected for zero-emission vehicles and charging stations would go to benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities.
Would this tax be ongoing?
No, the tax increase would end on January 1, 2043. Or earlier if there are 3 consecutive calendar years in which statewide greenhouse gas emissions are 80% below 1990 levels.
And what would be the fiscal effect?
The new tax would generate $3.5 billion to $5 billion annually, growing over time. That funding would support an increase in zero-emission vehicle programs by $2.8 to $4 billion annually. Additionally, the proposition would increase state funding for wildfire prevention and response by $700 million to $1 billion annually. Proposition 30 could also decrease government costs related to firefighting, cleanup, and recovery, reducing the cost of wildfire management in the future.
So, Regina, what are supporters saying?
Supporters are saying existing programs are insufficient to address the state's poor air quality, which is largely caused by vehicle exhaust and wildfire smoke. Proposition 30 would make zero-emission vehicles more affordable and fund the necessary infrastructure to support them. And existing funding for wildfire prevention and suppression are inadequate. Proposition 30 provides needed funding for firefighters and equipment.
And what are the opponents saying?
Opponents are saying the Proposition 30 tax increase is not necessary. California is already investing billions of dollars on multi-year climate programs. Proposition 30 commits money from income taxes, normally a major source of school funding, to zero emission vehicles and fire suppression interests. Rideshare companies will heavily benefit from Proposition 30 instead of having to fund these changes themselves.
Can you tell us about campaign financing?
Sure. As of September 9th, $16 million has been contributed in support of the top donor being Lyft. And in opposition, $4.3 million has been contributed. See the top donors on your screen.
In summary, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote means the taxpayers would pay an additional 1.75% in personal income taxes over $2 million to fund zero emission vehicle programs and wildfire response and prevention activities.
And what about a no vote?
A no vote means there would be no changes made to taxes of personal income of $2 million or above.
Thank you so much, Regina.
You're welcome, Karen.